welcome to CovéaPod. I'm your host, Nicki Crabb, Head of SME and Schemes Trading at Covéa Insurance. Today we're going to discuss insurance education, and I'm here with our special guest, Donna Scully, who's Joint Owner Director at Carpenters Group, who are one of the UK's leading providers of insurance and legal services. They work in partnership with insurers, brokers and MGAs to deliver a variety of outsourced claims. Carpenters Group is 30 years old this year. We also have Tom Hepworth, our Research and Insight Manager, who works in our Customer Experience team. Thanks both. We've come together today to talk about some recent research we've conducted with 190 business owners and how we can improve insurance understanding, which at times can be complex. As an industry, we want to get better at making sure insurance is accessible. Within Covéa, we've launched an insurance education piece across all lines of business, and there have been some findings that have been really eye-opening. Tom, can you tell us about the initial findings from the research?
Yeah, of course. So during winter 2023, we conducted research with about 190 small and medium business owners, and that was all to do with what they understand around, I suppose, business insurance in general, and some of the quirks that I suppose happen within that product. And one of the key findings we found was that nearly half of all sole traders we asked weren't insured, and it's commonly driven by two key things, and it was either a lack of understanding as to what cover they needed and when, or cost concerns. 1 in 3 believe they don't need insurance up until the business starts to make money or they employ other people. We simply know that isn't the case, and it's a dangerous assumption to make.
And Donna, do the findings that we've discovered through the research, do they surprise you?
Yeah, they do. They're surprising and kind of scary as well, aren't they? I think I'm not surprised really around the cost side of it, because I think Consumer Intelligence did some research about a year or so ago and said that the cost of living crisis is coming. People are going to kind of cut down on the insurance they had, and they would not kind of renew insurance and stuff. So I was kind of expecting that we'd come across more underinsurance or, people not having insurance. I think the understanding piece is a worry, isn't it? Because, we as in this industry, we want people to understand, we want it to be easy to know what's available and why you should have insurance. So firstly, I want to say it's really great that you did this research, because, without it, we wouldn't know how bad things are and know that we have to address them. I think also having the podcast is a really good thing, because I hope somebody or people will listen to it and hear about this problem, and kind of we can have that kind of collaborative bit where we say as an industry, how can we do something about this? How can we help it? So yeah, no, when I looked at those, I looked at them, before the slides and the stats, I was a bit like, what are we going to do to help that? How can we fix it and make it better than it is?
Oh, thank you, Donna. And what type of risk do you think small businesses could be open to if they don't take out insurance?
Well, I think it's kind of really open-ended, isn't it? I think it's, if I'm a sole trader and I've got my van and my tools, I probably think that's all I need. But then, if I'm going out and working, anything can happen while you're out and about. I mean, even things like spilling paint somewhere or tripping over, or somebody tripping over your toolbox or something. There's all these things that can happen. So I think it's worth kind of setting out for people what kind of problems that, especially with your expertise, what claims do you see? What risks do you think are there? And I was trying to think before we came on here, how can we educate people around that? How can we kind of say, have you thought about this and this? And I think it's really important that we do that. I know for us, we're 30 years old this year. And I remember starting out, John and I, and you think, we'd about 5 people. And you don't really think about the risks. You don't really think about, because again, you haven't really got much money. But one of the things that was really helpful for us is we were referred to a good broker. And he kind of helped us and guided us and talked to us about, what we needed to look at and to put our money in good areas, early on and to protect ourselves. Because the thing is, when you're small and you haven't got much money and you think, I can't afford insurance, that's the worst time to do that, because if you expose yourself and you get a claim or you have to pay out and you're not insured, it can really be very, very damaging to a new business. So I think, it's a really interesting area, I think. Really, it's nice to talk about it.
Thank you. And I think that's really vital and actually echoes another of the guests we've had on before talking about using a broker and helping them help to kind of navigate through. Because I think when we think of insurance, it is generally renewal claim. It's not something that the end customer has that interaction with. So I think it's a really valid point you've made there, Donna. And Tom, can you talk a little bit more about the support business owners said that they needed?
Yeah, of course. So another one of the findings was that 2 in 5 business owners said they require additional support when it comes to insurance. Now, we'd asked the same question across people that had car insurance, home insurance. It was 1 in 5. So that's double what we're seeing in business insurance. And a further 1 in 6 said that they lacked confidence when it came to choosing the right product for them. And what we're actually seeing is an increase in business owners trying to purchase insurance themselves with a goal of cutting costs. But what they're inadvertently doing is purchasing a policy that probably isn't meeting the needs, it isn't covering what they need to, or as Donna mentioned before, and it might be putting them in cases where they're putting incorrect valuations in for tools or property or stock. And it's actually leaving them underinsured. And when it comes to that moment of truth of making a claim, they're in a bit of a pickle. So in a separate piece of research we did, we actually found an increase in business owners going back to their previous broker after they'd, I suppose, purchased it themselves. And they're asking for help in getting them out of that situation. And it commonly is one of those things where people maybe are increasing excesses or maybe thinking, I'll cut that out, I don't need it. I'll cut this out, I don't need it. And leaving themselves in a situation where they can't afford a claim. They're getting a payout that's nowhere near what they expected. And it's putting the business and the people that they employ at risk.
It's really interesting research. And as we mentioned, some of the other thoughts that it starts sparking off, there's just so much variation when you start thinking about this topic. And I'm really pleased that we are starting to pick this up and do the education piece on it. And Donna, do you think commercial insurance for small business owners is complex?
I think it is. If I go back to 30 years ago, I mean, probably not so much now because I've got a team around me and I've got experts in the business and I've been in the insurance industry now for kind of over 25 years, but commercial is not my bag. You know, we're a niche motor and house, outsourced company. So I think it is. And I think I go back to, I mean, we stayed with the same broker throughout our whole history. And he was bought out a few years ago and he's retired. But for me, I think, and it's interesting what Tom says about, you know, is it cheaper to cut out the middleman and go direct? But it isn't really when you haven't got any knowledge or you haven't got any expertise. And for me, I was getting his buying power and his expertise. So I saw it differently that, you know, I was getting, I mean, maybe later on you might feel like you don't need one because you've got that in-house expertise yourself. But I think early on, in particular, a broker is really important. And certainly, for me, it was that thing about what else do we need? And he would suggest things and he'd go out and try and get us the best price and explain things to us and why it wouldn't be a good idea not to cover this or cover that. So I just think, and then also when you're in the business, as the business is growing, you need different types of insurance and you don't really know much about them or what is, you know, because if you go online and you put it in, you think, is this a good rate? Is this a good policy rate? And you've no idea. Whereas I could kind of say to Graham, is this a good rate? Do you think that's okay for, you know, a 10 people business or a 5 people business? And you kind of build up that trust. So certainly for me, it was really important. And I would be saying to people, you know, don't try and do it on your own unless you have got kind of expertise or that kind of knowledge. Maybe if you're married to an insurance expert or, you know, you have someone in the family. But other than that, I'd be saying, you know, one of the things John and I really focused on is doing what we could do. But anything that was outside our expertise, we took advice. And we took expert advice, you know, whether that was other lawyers, say commercial lawyers if we were, because we only do personal injury. So I really I really promote that. I'm really keen on that. And it would definitely be one of my recommendations to people is to, you know, get expert advice, get that bigger buying power when you're small.
I think that's great advice. And I think what's great to hear from you, Donna, is that you've got both views on it as a business owner and also knowing the insurance industry and what works there. And when we actually think about insurance, what are some of the areas when you're looking at it, do you think could be made easier?
I think the answer is probably everywhere in insurance, if I'm being honest. I've just been to the ABI conference and they were talking about, you know, making insurance more easy to navigate and to understand. To try and stop people not being insured is to show them its worth. And to make, there was a really good panel there, and they had kind of a consumer person, and he was talking about, education is really important, and that's our topic today, but also making insurance simple, the terms and conditions, the terms you use and the words you use when you're selling it. So it's not just about education, it's unaffordable. He was talking about education, plain English, and affordability. They were kind of like the three strands for him. And I think I could really kind of resonate with that and see that was important. So it was interesting that I sat through that panel about 2 weeks ago, and then I knew I was coming on here and education was the topic because, he was saying it's not enough. There's other things that we need to do as well. And I thought, yeah, he's right. But obviously, education is part of that process as well.
I think that just kind of sums it up. And I think one of the things when I look back years ago when I started underwriting was the complexity of the language used. And it's something we've taken on board across all business areas at Covéa, be that personal and now commercial lines, is trying to talk in plain English in insurance, because there's all sorts of different words that I think if you've never been in insurance, you're just not going to understand what's going on. And that kind of leads me to another question for Tom, is finally 1 in 6 people said they were neurodivergent. And what do you find out about that, Tom?
Yes, like you said, 1 in 6 SME business owners were neurodivergent. That's over the UK average, so that's 1 in 7. And the more common conditions we saw tended to be dyslexia, ADHD and dyscalculia, so I suppose difficulty understanding numbers. And when we first saw the results, we were a little bit shocked, but we openly discussed them with Nicki, with her team, and also internally. And it actually isn't that surprising when you consider the link that there is around, I suppose, business ownership, entrepreneurship, and resilience, creativity, that ability to think outside the box within those that are neurodivergent. It can make things like interacting with insurance much more challenging, though, and we do see that in terms of, like you just mentioned, the comms that I suppose our business owners receive from their insurers, but also having that methodological sort of thinking and processes, and sometimes things aren't as black and white as they may seem to those that aren't neurodivergent.
And what type of support should we have in place for people with additional needs, Tom?
I think, look, the introduction of consumer duty and the focus upon, I suppose, vulnerable customers, it's intensifying, it's increased the pace of change in this area, and rightly so. But one of the key things, and we mentioned it a little bit already, is keeping those communications and those processes simple, easy to understand. And when we've done research separately around those that are neurodivergent, the things that insurers and I suppose any business can offer isn't groundbreaking. It's kind of tweaking those existing processes and just making things really, really simple. Look, we know how overwhelming the comms received from insurers, banks, all the financial services can be. And there's that common goal for the industry to really just simplify it and put focus on increasing consumer understanding.
No, absolutely agree. And Donna, do you think as an industry for both insurance and also your industry, we're far enough ahead on the support that we provide?
No, I don't think we are. I think it's an emerging, evolving area. I don't know if you know, but it's Neurodiverse Week this week. So it's kind of, focused again, it's very appropriate, but it's focusing and, shining a spotlight on something that is really common. 1 in 6 is really common. I think what we want to promote around our people and our customers is a culture of inclusivity. And what I'd love to see is people being able to be more open about it, and there being no stigma attached to it. When you think back not long ago, if you were at school or something, it was horrible for people, and people weren't diagnosed and they didn't know what was wrong with them. They felt a little bit different, but they didn't know why. So I think we're just seeing a lot more diagnosis even now in adults, and it's like that eureka moment, isn't it, where people go, I get it now. That's why that happens to me, or why I don't really get that until a bit later or something. So I really love that we have to be open with each other. It'd be great if people could just say, you know what? I don't even know I've got ADHD, and there's nothing bad about it. So I think that would be really helpful to us as an industry and as people employing people, that we can have people able to say it. I think for us as a company, where obviously we do some training around it, we've got people in the business who are neurodiverse, so we listen to them. But certainly in our first notification of loss unit, it is an issue because, people are coming in, it's a noisy area. Noise can be very troublesome for some people, depending on what their problems are. And I think as well, following a script in ethanol is quite tricky, keeping people on there. So I think we're aware, and I think we spotting the signs. So training people that if you can see someone is really struggling to continue with the conversation, you maybe can slow it down or take it to a quieter place, or maybe say, are you busy? Can we do this later when you can concentrate? I just think it's giving people options. I'm all about one size doesn't fit all. And we have to have flexibility. I agree with Tom. I think this has to be around treating your customer fairly, vulnerable customers, all of that consumer duty. Because, if it's 1 in 6 people, it's a problem. It's a big problem, or I don't like to call it a problem because I think everybody adds something to the world, but I just think it's something that we have to deal with. It's part of the tapestry of who we are and what we do. So, yeah, I think the more we speak about it, and I think this week is going to be great because I think we're going to see lots of stuff out there, aren't we, about what people are doing and why and how we can I do think if we're more open, people who are suffering or have, some issues can just be like, yeah, isn't this good? Because it's not a negative thing. It actually, as you said, Tom, it can be very positive in terms of, entrepreneurialism and things like that. So.
Thank you. I think some really great insights there. And I like the positivity of it, that it can actually be a great benefit. And I think it is great at how we're talking more about it. And even just we're doing this podcast about insurance education. So I think some really good points in there. Still some work that needs to be happening across the industry, but I think we've taken the first step. Well, that's been great. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you for everyone to listening to this episode of CovéaPod. Please subscribe to Spotify to pick up our other episodes and follow us on LinkedIn for our Doing What Really Matters newsletter.